doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
Made its position clear on multiple occasions. The U.S. 60-plus years of full blockade and illicit sanctions have brought profound sufferings to the Cuban people. Recently, the U.S. once again upgraded blockade and sanction measures, hitting hard at the basic livelihood of the Cuban people and raising concern from the international community. The U.S. needs to heed the call for justice from the international community, stop its blockade, coercion, and pressuring against Cuba at once, and stop violating the Cuban people's rights to survival and development. China firmly supports Cuba in defending national sovereignty and standing against external interference. We stand ready to work with the rest of the world to uphold international fairness and justice.
What was crazy is I said, I think the next warfighting domain, before it's the moon, is the subterranean domain.
And is it subterranean then the moon?
Yeah, subterranean then the moon. The moon's just going to take longer to become an actual warfighting domain. And I'd say it's not a domain when it's like a special weirdo little place where a few people might live. Like it needs to be a larger than that. Look, the United States and the Soviet Union both believed during the Cold War that the crust of the Earth would turn into a battle space, and that you would move people and machines and effects through fire and logistics chains using the crust of the Earth the same way that a submarine moves through the ocean. And I think that the thing that killed that dream isn't that we decided that it was impossible. It was that we won the Cold War, and we turned the spigot off on a lot of very, very interesting things. The difference now is that with the power of autonomy, you can now build these things much more cheaply, much lower risk. You don't need to build manned, crewed things. You've seen the movie The Core, of course. We don't
Is that
need...
what you guys are up to?
No. Like the thing from The Core is what the US and the Soviets were trying to build back then. The Soviets built a working submarine. It worked so well that they lost it in the Earth, a nuclear-powered submarine, a submarine that moves through terra firma. China had provided Iran with manufacturing equipment and manufacturing expertise that had caused a steep curve upwards in their ballistic missile production capacity, and that they were only a few months into that production capacity. If you allowed them to continue that for even 2 years, they would build an arsenal that is so vast that we could never afford to take action. They could build nuclear weapons with impunity. They could strike U.S. or allied bases with impunity, and we just wouldn't be able to do anything. This is like the North Korea scenario. North Korea has so much artillery built up in the hills that we really can't even dream of doing anything against them, right? They build nukes. We can't do anything about it because they're going to pound Seoul into pieces with weapons from 50 years ago. And so I think the steel man is we could not let the Iran situation turn into North Korea on steroids. Facial recognition is probably the wrong tool to use as part of the kind of final stage targeting of kinetic weapons. It's just still a very fraught technology. There's a lot of ways to spoof it. There's a lot of ways that it can be wrong. There's a lot of ways that people can go out of their way to affirmatively trick a system that is built on facial recognition. And so to me, it's a great tool for, let's say, law enforcement to perform investigative activity. It is not a good tool to use when you're deciding who lives and who dies in a split-second decision.
Security. Yes, I would much have preferred consultation, but I'm going to tell you something. Tell you a little story. We consulted till we were blue in the face about Iraq. We went to the UN twice about Iraq. Whatever you think about the decision in Iraq, we did the diplomatic thing as carefully as you could possibly do it. A lot of it led by Colin Powell and the president and Tony Blair. And I remember being in the Azores with Aznar and Blair and a few others when a picture appeared on TV with Jacques Chirac and Gerhard Schroeder standing with Vladimir Putin against the United States. And I thought I was going to have to take George Bush off the ceiling. So it's not like we haven't seen this book before, this play before. Sometimes I think the problem is when the United States has to do something really hard, like really deal with a bad guy who's been a bad guy for a long time. And one of the reasons to go to war against Iran was, yes, the nuclear program, but their sophisticated.
Welcome back to the SCIF. We are on the road, obviously not in the studio. We're out in the field doing some really interesting research on some stories. We'll be back in the studio tomorrow, but we're going to get right to it. We got a very busy show today. I'll get to the mission brief and a lot of the intel later in the show, but I've got a very special guest who I'm really excited to bring on, Susan Kokinda of Promethean Action. I don't think she needs an introduction, but Susan, welcome. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So I have been fascinated watching your stuff that you guys have been putting out because, you know, everybody felt something was kind of wrong. We didn't really know what it was, but you guys are really giving some insight that I find just spot on. So would you mind just giving us an overview, 30,000-foot view of what you think is happening in the Middle East right now and really globally with the globalist issue?
Well, 30,000 feet view is one way of looking at it, but I think what people really have to do is locate this fight in a longer arc of history, because this is not something which is developed in the past couple of years, and honestly, it hasn't even developed in the past 47 years. You know, if you look at the actual battle in the world, which is between sovereign nations, of which the United States is the first, and I would argue continues to be the best, and an imperial system, what people call globalization, which we call the modern day British imperial system. You have to locate everything going on in the Mideast from that standpoint, because it has been used as a cockpit for war for over 100 years, especially since diesel engines and everybody figured out how important oil and, you know, gasoline was going to be. Yeah. The British have drawn the territory lines, the boundary lines going back to Sykes-Picot and the Balfour Treaty. And then what you just see is constant manipulation of religious warfare to keep it constantly in play so that their financial institutions, like the City of London, like Lloyd's of London, can basically use this as a faucet, you know, to turn on, turn off oil, what Peter Navarro calls the terror premium in terms of oil coming out of the Middle East. So if you step back to the president's first term, where he launched the Abraham Accords, he broke the business model of this imperial system, which is to keep everybody fighting. You know, you keep the tensions at a certain simmer level. You have quartets and quintets and whatever negotiating, but you never change the basic dynamics of it. Everybody is a pawn on the chessboard. Donald Trump has kicked over the chessboard. And you saw it with the Abraham Accords, which he picked up in the second term. You've seen it with the Board of Peace, where he's pulled this amazing configuration of countries, Muslim and other countries together to say, why don't we develop this region? Why is it constantly have to be in turmoil, countries kept backward, nations aren't allowed to develop? Now that gets you to Iran, because if, again, you look at the history of Iran, go back to Mossadegh in the 1950s, right? A nationalist leader who wanted to develop the country for the benefit of the Iranian people, and he was overthrown by the British with some help from the Dulles brothers, you know, and then along comes the Shah. He was put in, but, you know, as is often the case, people say, wait a minute, you know, maybe I do have an agenda that will help the people of my country. He too wanted to develop. He wanted to develop nuclear power. And all of a sudden your oil is not so important, as a control mechanism. He's overthrown. And that's what we're dealing with today. And what the president is doing across the board throughout the Mideast, saying, I'm not going to treat nations as proxies anymore. I want them to be nations. Now, when you have an intransigent force like the IRGC and the theocracy, at a certain point, you have to use kinetic force. And he's clearly using that. He's given them every opportunity to negotiate, to work this thing through. To this day, he still does not want to destroy the basic civilian infrastructure of this country. We could, he hasn't, because he wants there to be a sovereign nation somehow emerging out of this, but emerging organically and not with your typical Bush, Obama, Clinton regime change. You knock out government, you put in your guy, and you have perpetual chaos. So, as I say, 30,000-foot view is important, but open the aperture to the last 100 years, and you put the two of those together, and I think you'll see pretty clearly what's going on.
So it's obvious to me for some time that by the way, we've done a lot of work with some of the resistance units and groups in Iran, and our feeling is really, as you said, organically, this should be becoming a new state. And you mentioned Mossadegh, which, yes, he wanted to take the resources for the Iranian people and not send it to the City of London. But there is something in the UK that has really tried to keep this regime in place. Do you agree with that? And
yeah.
A lot of the info ops against some of the resistance units in Iran are coming from the UK, and the UK media, which I find fascinating. Do you know much?
I didn't know that, but it does not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Because look, again, you can go back even further. You can go back to the 19th century, but especially with the creation of the Muslim Brotherhood in 1922, this was an operation by British intelligence. This question of radical political Islam, not secular Muslim nations, of which we used to have a lot, of which some of their populations were Muslims, but their populations are also Christian and Jewish and so on. Iraq was one of those. Syria was one of those. Lebanon, Libya was one of those. And you overthrow those and you put this radical political Islam, and you can trace it all back to British intelligence at some point in this. So, yeah, I mean, to the degree to which you have the British intelligence, quote, controlling the IRGC, I certainly wouldn't go that far. I think there's always, with these kinds of things,
supporting or trying to enable.
Yeah, and there's a certain Frankenstein monster quality to some of this. The British discovered that with Adolf Hitler. But certainly they're feeding into it, and certainly they do not want what Donald Trump wants, which is why Trump launches Epic Fury. And for the first time, all these warmongering European countries who have never seen a war they haven't liked in the past 30 years say, oh, no, we don't like this one.
Yes.
We don't have anything to do with this, because it's not being carried out for their purposes, to keep the geopolitical game going. It's being carried out for a different purpose, so they don't support it. And I would not be at all surprised, that they're feeding what they need to feed into to just ensure that you cannot get, and the kinetic warfare, get rid of the insane factions that don't want peace, that want to continue to hold the world hostage, and create a space for something organic to actually arise. It doesn't surprise me at all.
So there's been a big info op, and I have my suspicions of who's behind this, to put Reza Pahlavi, the old Shah's son, in power. That hasn't worked. I think the Iranian people have rejected that pretty much. But do you have any insight into that movement? I mean, it's been very obvious.
It was the same thing in terms of Machado in Venezuela. And the president has just made very, very clear, no, I'm not playing that game. These are nice people. He'll say that all the time. She's a nice person. She gave me her Nobel Peace Prize. He's a nice guy. But, the president himself said, I don't know that he has the kind of support that he needs. And I think that's absolutely the case. So these are operations that are ongoing. But, the president has changed. He's changed the state of play, especially in this second term. Clearly, he wanted to do it in the first term. He had to deal with everything, the impeachments, the idiots in his administration, like John Bolton, one of whom is now indicted. Yay. So his second term, he came in with a tight team, with a very clear mission, and he has changed the state of play.
Definitely. Let me ask you, what is the monarchy? You know, you see King Charles doing a self-portrait. He looks like a devil in this red, you know, I mean, what is the monarchy? Is that the seed of globalism, in your opinion?
I don't think it's the seat. I think it's one of the instruments, because the important thing is for people to constantly think from the standpoint of systems and not the particular institutions that are captured by the systems. Because if you go back to a time before the American Revolution, there was a chance that the British monarchy actually could have come out very, very well under the great philosopher Leibniz. So it's a question of what are the institutions serving? And clearly the current British monarchy, you know, throughout really since the time of the American Revolution, has been an arm, part of the operating system of this imperial elite. And you can certainly see it in terms of the ideology of this current royal family. You know, Prince Philip once said that if he could be reincarnated, he would like to come back as a deadly virus to help solve the overpopulation problem. Honestly, if he died before COVID, we could have called it the Prince Philip virus, but he died afterwards. And then the current king, Charles, has said something similar. If the human race were a herd of sheep, someone's got to cull the herd. So they have a mentality that the fundamental basis of this system, of the imperial system, is that we're all animals. We really have no power over nature. We're at nature's mercy. Therefore, sometimes we overpopulate, and someone's going to have to do something about that. You know, you can go back to Thomas Malthus in terms of that argument. And some of us are better bred than the rest, so we get to be the ones to decide who's going to get culled, and you know, and so on. Our founding fathers came along and they said, no, we reject that image of man. We want to create a system of government which is based on man in the image of the creator as a creator. And therefore, there is no such thing as overpopulation. There is no such thing as limited resources, because using our mind, we can exert greater dominion over nature. And that is the history of the United States. And that's the essential conflict. So the monarchy clearly is an arm of this. The City of London is its financial arm. MI6, MI5, you know, they're the part of the intelligence arm. It's obviously broader than that. It's often included the United States, probably not so much anymore. You know, you have the insurance arm, you have the intellectual arm, the way that they have corrupted our thinking, you know, through their educational institutions sort of morphing into the United States, or outfits like the Council on Foreign Relations, which goes back to the 1920s, and others, where actually in the 20th and 21st century, their critical way of control is what I would call soft power. They've corrupted the way that we think, so we don't even know that this is the fight. And the president, by fighting the way he fights, has forced them into the open in a way that you haven't seen in your lifetime.
That is so.
More and more people are saying, "Oh, well, this makes sense. This is what this is really all about."
Yeah, I mean, I'm 62 years old. I traveled the world for 40 years, and I didn't know this until 4 or 5 years ago. So it's fascinating. And you look at the Dominion voting systems. I mean, come on, you know, the name, the symbology, flock safety cameras, like you're part of the flock, the surveillance. I mean, it's just in your face. You mentioned City of London. I completely agree. I used to trade a lot with those banks and some of the offshoots, you know, the big families. But what about the Vatican and DC? There's also a lot of theory that they're kind of the other operating centers. What are your thoughts?
I kind of reject that. The whole DC thing is kind of a misreading of what actually happened with the city in the 1870s and so on. And I think a lot of this stuff just really falls prey to the difference between looking at a system and the ideas behind it, and how it inserts those ideas into a population, which is its main form of control, versus saying, well, it's this thing over here. You know, it's the Vatican, or it's the Jews, or it's this or that. It's not any of those things. I mean, the Vatican is a good example. You had popes that actually reflected the actual human Christian view of man as a creator and rejected environmentalism and perpetual wars and all the rest of this. And now you've had the recent one. So it's not, people shouldn't just get, I always say it's the difference between a noun and a verb. Don't get fixated on the noun. Look at what's actually driving it, because people do change.
Sure.
It's like people looking at Scott Bessent and saying, oh, well, he worked for George Soros, therefore he's no good. Well, my attitude with him working for George Soros is he crashed the British pound, which means he's got some skills. And now he's used them on our side. So just don't get stuck on the nouns. Just constantly think through the process. And it is the case that people do change.
Well, Bessent's he's been phenomenal, and his methodology of what he's doing with the bonds. They're some of these long-term bonds are trading half price, buy them back, and then refinance. It's literally reducing the debt with just a flick of the button. You've talked in the past about the Civil War in the U.S. and that the UK was behind a lot of that. I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on that.
Sure. I recommend people go to our Promethean Action website. We have a toolkit where we have ebooks, and one of them is Why the British Kill U.S. Presidents, which was authored by two of my colleagues, Bob Ingram and Barbara Boyd. Bob's discussion of the Lincoln assassination gives a quick snapshot of this. But the whole question of the reintroduction of slavery into the United States, look, it had died out after the American Revolution, because key founding fathers like George Washington, like Alexander Hamilton, and I might add, not like Jefferson and Madison, but they knew they had to make the slavery compromise to pass the Constitution, but they immediately went into a political mobilization to basically begin to dry it out. And because our economy was beginning to grow as an industrial economy that needed not slave labor, but creative labor, it was actually beginning to die out. But it was the British who brought it back in earlier in the 19th century, because it was part of their business model.
True.
They
wanted in the Caribbean.
And there was a whole triangle of cheap cotton, opium, and the financing from India, all of it going back. So again, you can almost look at the Civil War like everything they've done in the Mideast in the 20th century. It's part of their business model. And then, there was direct support for the Confederacy by the British.
Yes.
There's also the famous historical fact that most people don't know about. The Russians sent their navy to New York and San Francisco Harbor to say to the British, you are not going to intervene on behalf of the North. We are here to protect these northern harbors. So
interesting.
We had a different set of friends back in the 19th century.
Well, we also helped after World War II. There were American troops in Siberia. Not many people know much about that. We've researched it pretty extensively here. I'm from the South, and there's obviously a pride there, but I think most of the guys that were fighting in that war were just pawns, like so many other wars. I mean, they were fighting for their homes, the North invaded or whatever. And so I don't think people really understood the geopolitical global forces that were in the same thing today. And hopefully we're trying to help with that. But why has the military in the UK been allowed to atrophy, in your opinion?
Because they assume they would perpetually be able to have us as their dumb giant. And they said that. Every couple of years, the British House of Lords does a special report on the US-UK special relationship. This year's, they basically said it's not so special anymore because Trump is not playing along with it. But in there, one of the Lords said, look, the key to the rules-based order, which is sort of their term for how we run the world through globalization, which is both the financial and the military, the key to the rules-based order is enforcement. And you can't have enforcement if the United States isn't enforcing it. So he said it right there.
Yeah.
And that has been their operating system since especially the beginning of the 20th century, because we came out of the Civil War, despite the assassination of Lincoln, despite the Civil War, we became, increasingly a powerful industrial nation. And other nations were following the American system, China, Russia, Germany, France, many, many nations. The British said, all right, we're not going to be able to take them on physically any longer. we have to take them over politically. We have to take over their institutions. Basically, we have to make them our bitch.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. You know, and a few presidents bucked. John Kennedy was trying to buck. You know, we saw what happened to him. Reagan, I think, would have bucked a lot more if he hadn't been shot 3 months into his administration. And I think Bush people took, you know, basically consolidated most of the control of the administration from then on. He was able to implement some of his policies like the SDI, but not a lot. So that's how they've operated. They've had the United States. And Donald Trump is an existential threat to that. They saw it in the first administration. Obviously, the role of the British and MI6 in Russiagate is out there for anybody who wants to look at it. And it's pretty deep. And again, our ebook goes into it in a lot more detail than most people know. But, you know, so he showed himself to be that threat. They were convinced that you know, he wasn't going to come back. So we had the events of 2020, 2021. It was almost assassinated 2 years ago, 2 days ago, right? And he's back and he's doing it. And you know, one of the unfortunate things is so much of his base, which has, you know, which fought for him, which stuck with him, which understood what a historical figure he is, has been affected by these psyops. Well, he's not doing this. He's not doing this. This is a perpetual war in Iran, and so on and so forth. And they're flaking away, which leaves this entire revolution, which is what I call it, in danger if people don't come back to their senses and mobilize for the midterm elections.
I completely agree. And it's obvious to me it's an info op because you've had the same talking points across multiple it's almost very easy now to spot who's actually working for one team and who's working for the other team, depending on the talking points that they're putting out. It's just fascinating to me. So what is going on in Europe? What is the EU? I see it almost as like a Fourth Reich kind of system. You've got a lot of Nazi influence. You've got communist influence. I mean, what is it in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it is, you know, the operating center right now for this imperial operation. You know, between London and Brussels, you basically have nations that have given up their sovereignty. That was the whole point of the EU. So they have no power. And they're just being marched, as you say, into a surveillance state, into the destruction of their cultures, and into war with Russia. And I don't think, and their populations don't like it, which is why the opposition parties in places like Germany and France are polling better than the so-called establishment parties. Now, are they going to let, you know, Marie Le Pen or the AfD get anywhere? You know, those are fights inside those countries. But yeah, I think your description of it is absolutely accurate. They're vassals. These countries are now vassals of this imperial system.
Last question. We had Palmer Luckey on in the cold open with Anduro talking about a lot of new warfare techniques. But one thing he's been talking about is China putting in, you know, a lot of technology into Iran. How does China fit into this? Because I see it as almost like gangs in New York. You have different criminal gangs. Sometimes they work together, sometimes they don't. But how does the CCP play into all this?
Well, I think China's a complex place, you know, and I certainly would be getting way outside my wheelhouse to get too specific about it. I think obviously there is a factional situation because Xi Jinping has purged a whole lot of people recently. My approach to China is basically Donald Trump's approach. This is a sovereign nation, and and he always talks about Xi. He doesn't talk about the rest of the government, and he's acting in the interests of his people. You know, they acted in the interest of their people because they took advantage of free trade. And as the president says, I don't blame him. That's on us because we were stupid. But now, you know, we're going to level the playing field and we can work this out. And I think that's how he approaches every single country. He doesn't want to be trapped in this binary, you know, China bad. Bingo. Us good, China bad. That's the end of it. Boom. I mean, you know, at one point when he was asked about Chinese, you know, spies and stealing our secrets in the United States and, you know, your typical tradecraft, he says, Yeah, well, do you know what we do to them?
Yeah.
I mean, he understands this is how great powers are supposed to this is how great powers deal with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there are hostile I don't know if factions is the right word. There are hostile groupings in China who want to do bad things to the United States. And I don't think the president is oblivious to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he thinks that the current configuration is something that can be worked with in a world of sovereign nations where we can avoid World War III.
Yeah.
And where we can break the control of this imperial system over the world. It's similar to his relationship to Russia. Mm-hmm. And, this is something that if you look at the three great powers that have nuclear weapons, the United States, Russia, China, and India, what if the three of them as sovereign nations, not as tools of empire, as communist props or whatever, but as sovereign nations said, hey, we'd like a world of sovereign nations without the City of London, without the International Monetary Fund, without NATO and the EU. It would be a very interesting world, and I think that's in the back of the president's mind.
Wow. Love the discussion. I want to have you back down the road, but tell us how people can follow you, Promethean Action, all of that, please.
Sure. Promethean Action has got a free newsletter, prometheanaction.com, which keeps you up to date in terms of all the YouTube shows and classes we do. We also do have a political arm called Promethean PAC, prometheanpac.com, and I do a weekly midterm boot camp on Zoom for activists around the country to tune people up for how we can intervene into these midterm elections. So you can find information on that on prometheanpac.com.
Susan, thank you very much. I want to have you back down the road. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
First time ever, we're bringing you My Pillow mattresses and mattress toppers for as low as $99.98. Remember, sleep's all about temperature and pressure points. Whatever sleep needs you have, we have the right technology for you. Like our My Pillow mattress topper, our queen size has over 10,000 individual comfort supports to help relieve your pressure points. And how about our 3-inch Hybrid Plus mattress topper? It's infused with copper and silver to help your body get the restorative sleep it needs. And our My Pillow and Case Coil mattresses, I personally helped develop these mattresses to make sure they have everything needed to give us great sleep. Plus, they're made right here in the USA, and they ship right to your front door absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to get MyPillow mattresses and toppers for as low as $99.98 and free shipping.
I'm watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mix it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back, cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
Put silver wings on my son's chest. Make him one of America's best. He'll be a man He'll test one day, have him win the Green Beret.
Welcome back to the SCIF. We've got another very special guest coming up. I'll introduce him in a second while we focus on Iran. I want to say hello to the crew in the chat. We had to jump right into things because Susan, her schedule is pretty heavy, so we took her when we could get her. So I want to say hello to the crew in the chat. Love all the engagement. Check out whatfinger.com, great aggregator site. The theme of this show is really to help people understand what's happening in the world. And that's why I was so grateful to her to give me a big picture, because I feel and I see a lot of different movements of the chessboard, but to really tie it all together is what we want to do here. And she moved us down that football field a good ways today. I really appreciate that. Let's do the mission brief real quick while we wait for our guest. This is July 15th. I'm your host, Todd Wood. Here's the mission brief. The war escalates with Iran. We're going to have ongoing coverage in the Middle East on that. And also north of there, Ukraine is striking Russian vessels in the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. That is getting pretty intense. So we're going to be discussing that as well. Obviously, the Matrix is pushing back, trying to shut down Russian energy production. And their thought is that it's going to make Putin lose power inside of Russia. But, you know, knowing Russians as I do and knowing Ukrainians as I do, I've spent a lot of time in both countries. This is only going to make Russians more angry and more determined. You know, if you have to read history, folks, and history rhymes. And that's what Susan is talking about. You know, the Soviet Union lost 27 million people fighting the Nazis. These people aren't giving up. You look at Napoleon. You look at the Polish invasions. It didn't turn out well. So, but you know, the empire, as Susan says, still is going to keep trying. Russian intercepts drone shipments deep into Siberia, and you remember the attacks on the airfields with drones. Those have been turned back. So. They shut down that operation. Trump reportedly urging Israel to withdraw from Syria and Lebanon. We'll be in Beirut shortly to give you that from the ground. And native plant restoration, especially up in the Northeast, is a booming business. And we'll dig into that more as we get going. Just, you know, for people that just joined, we're not in the studio. We're in the field this week researching some stories. But we'll be back in the studio tomorrow. So I want to introduce our guest. He's in the green room here. Salah Bayaziddi is the U.S. representative for the Komala party of Iranian Kurdistan. Following the Iranian Revolution in 1979, he was a young sympathizer, joined the Komala party, and became an activist in the Kurdish struggle against the Iranian government. In 1982, government security forces arrested him. Mr. Bayaziddi survived over 2 years of torture and solitary confinement for his beliefs in a free and democratic Iran, based on equality for all ethnic and religious groups, including Kurds. Following Mr. Bayaziddi's release from prison, he was under strict watch by government security agencies. From 1984 to 1990, he was deprived the right to study, the right to work, and the right to travel outside Iran. In 1990, he escaped Iran through the mountains of Turkey. In Ankara, he applied for and was accepted as a new Canadian immigrant through the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. In 1991, Mr. Bayaziddi settled in Toronto. He's been living there and active in Kurdish causes and human rights in Iran for over 35 years. Following Komala Party's 14th Congress in 2013 and its 15th Congress in 2017, Mr. Bayaziddi was elected to a leadership position as a member of its Central Committee. He has served as Komala's representative to the United Nations since 2018. He has a PhD from NSU, Florida, an MA in International Relations from Brock University, and a BA in Political Science from the York University in Canada. I want to welcome Mr. Bayaziddi. Thank you, sir, for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes. Good morning. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah.
I appreciate
yes, thank you. Appreciate you working with us. We're out of the studio this week, but thank you for coming on. Give us your overview real quick before we get started of what you think is happening in Iran right now. You obviously have, and our audience has a good knowledge of what is going, you know, the history of Iran and the different factions inside the country. But what do you see happening internally right now with the government forces, and who is running the country, in your opinion?
Iran has been in turmoil since 1979.
Hmm.
Hardliners, they took over the country. Supposedly, in pre 1979 was secular country. uh, Iranian people, when you're talking about Iranian people, we're talking about multi-ethnic, multinational country,
Hmm.
including the Kurds, the Turks, the Azeri, the Baluch Arab, all groups and religious groups beside Islam. There are several religious groups. So all these people in 1979 hoped for a democratic, semi-democratic, free country while it was secular at the pre-1979. But when
Hmm.
Ayatollah took that country, they took this country for 8 years war with Iraq. They kept it at the sanction because the terrorism, we did not start this conflict with Iran in US and West at February 28. They have been
Hmm.
war with the United States and West since 1979. They chanting the death to the US, to the Israel,
Hmm.
to the world.
Hmm.
They took hostage U.S. diplomats for 144 days. They killed U.S. Marines in Lebanon 1983. So we can continue when there were reason we did not succeed in Iraq. They give ammunition and bombs to the both Sunni terrorists and Shia terrorists. So a list can go on and on. So this is the type of country. Eventually, the Iranian in few occasions, they want to get rid of this regime, in last 15, 10 years, and the last one, it was just 6 months ago, and on January 8 and January 9, they killed numbers, I cannot verify, but the numbers could be as
Hmm.
high as 50, 60,000 people, and
Hmm.
mostly brilliant Iranian men and women. So this
Hmm.
country is in turmoil, the bad economic shape, the people who are taking over seemingly the new generation and the old generation of the IRGC is military junta is taking over the country. So the country is bad shape. Which I have some contact with the inside Iran. The
Hmm.
people they don't know what direction of the country would be at the 40 days war. Believe me, majority of Iranian all ethnic and groups, they were hope finally by after this war, if this regime will collapse, so it would be some sort of regime change, at least a
Hmm.
different regime. But it's not a good situation. They don't know we are heading to new war, what kind of war, regional war. So this is Iran internally is very bad shape.
So obviously things have changed on the ground in the last 48 hours. The war is reignited with the Americans attacking a lot of positions and Iran attacking some of the Gulf nations with missiles, etc. But take a step back. The memorandum of understanding. What were your thoughts on that? The strengths, the weaknesses. I mean, what did you think of that agreement?
Do you know memorandum of understanding? If we go back prior, like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, when we had a ceasefire with Iran, eventually there were some discussion in Pakistan and Switzerland. Maybe we are heading to some sort of agreement.
Hmm.
Then, if you remember, some points of this MOU was leaked to media
Hmm.
and everybody surprised, and even I
Hmm.
see some people close to administration, they say, no, this is Iranian version of the MOU. It can't be, because I couldn't believe it myself. Iran was badly beaten. Its spiritual leader, Khamenei, was killed. Its military all been killed. Economically bad shape, military bad shape, no air force, no
Hmm.
money. Did not make sense. We give all this point opportunity to Iranian just because we want to open the Strait of Hormuz. Plus, there was debatable amount of money was there, over $300 billion. Even though they said there is not come from U.S. money, but at least frozen money. But and the
Hmm.
most important, for first time since 2012, they allowed Iranians sell oil in the U.S. dollar.
Hmm.
That's significant. And Plus, we all fronts should be ceasefire. Lebanon, I don't know how Lebanon should be linked to the current this conflict, because for decade, if not say for years, the U.S. policy is trying to get rid of Iran's proxy. Means we legitimizing the Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization, and the U.S. and the Europeans. It's a part of this deal. So that was troubling. Then issue of the not interfering in each of country. So we all know, just as I said 6 months ago, about more than 60,000 Iranian being killed. Iran is a massive human rights violation. It's a bad country, and nobody should. It means nobody should discuss it. Nobody should talk it. Nobody. So there were a lot of points in that MOU, which it was too good to be true, honestly. And I did not expect these things. And we should understand this MOU. I know is not the final peace deal look like, but still give you some direction. And the only things Iranian should do, it was opening the Strait of Hormuz for only 60 days. And what's going to happen after 60 days? It was not clear. So for all, and Iranian, I go back one step to what I was discussing. Iranian supposed to be the side who are lost this war. Their military, their everything, they've been damaged. So, but seemingly they are been not been punished as a side of loser war. So what now we are, after we seeing new round of strikes, which is seemingly still is not called war happening. They were trying to, seemingly saying they are trying to give a chance to Iranian to. But we should understand. I don't want to go back. Go to do you probably next question. I will stop here. But that was how I felt about MOU.
Interesting. Thank you for your insight. Well, what are the obstacles in your view of getting some kind of agreement in place with Iran? Is it possible in your view?
Do you know? It's really hard to say, because we are trying to do this, for 47 years. As I say, I go back as we have experienced how Iranian hold the U.S. hostage. We have Iran's nuclear talks. It's the marathon talks for decades, for years. We have a JCPOA in 2015. Then frequently prior to 12 days war, and then 40 days war. There have been, I'm sure, a lot of material about how negotiating with Iranian can go. But one thing I think the U.S. audience should understand: Iran is not a normal country. It's not it's not even Soviet Union. It's not even North Korea. It's not other country. This people, they're fanatic people. They are apocalyptic. Version, and they want to destroy this world. Based on the Shia Islam, this world should be destroyed. Should be then their version. The Imam, so-called Imam, 12 Imam Mahdi Zaman is coming and spreading the Islam Shia to the world. So they see that world from that perspective. They can lie. This is the Shia Islam called taqiyya. You can lie, you can cheat, you can kill, you can you can do whatever you want, but you achieve your goals. I know in any talks you cannot trust your enemy, like Iranians. You should trust Iranians, but still you should have a mechanism, at least keep them and in check. I think one of the lock of this MOU was there was no any mechanism. JCPOA, with all its criticism I have many things, at least it was somehow better version. But we should just only to finish this part of my talk, say this regime is not normal. They are fanatic. They are on mission to destroy the world, destroy the US, destroy Israel if they can. So this is how we should deal with them, and it's difficult, this negotiation.
Well, you mentioned it's not normal. Can they become normal, or is any change we see just temporary for their negotiation tactics to delay and that kind of thing? What do you think?
I think, as I said, they are not normal. They're still, as the president said, hope the first and second layer of the old, ideologic IRGC, they've been killed. Khamenei was killed. So it made new generation, new technocrats coming to power. These people can make a deal. They can make, understand Iran is a big country with big, huge natural resources, geopolitically important. So Iranian can finally, arrived at a good life. We have experienced 2015 when we signed the JCPOA. Iran had that opportunity. A lot of companies, they thought they can make investment. We gave big, huge sum of the cash to the Iranian. But what happened to that money? Wow. That money was spent to arm the Hezbollah, to rebuild Hezbollah, cities and towns. Houthi, we didn't have a Houthis problem that in that level. So Houthi become armed. They have now the technology. So just imagine the Iranian after 12 days war, they were starting again their nuclear program, the rearming this group. So beside their plan as a Shia Khorasan, which is they have it for domination of the Middle East and beyond, this is really should be tough talk. Very, I'm not sure how they would do that, but the only way I can think, beside if we not go to regime change stage, they should be badly beaten. They should really come openly and publicly accept they are being defeated. Then we can have a go from there.
Interesting. On that note, the continuing conflict, what do they see as the U.S. weaknesses? I think they're very good at spotting these, like economic, political division internally, the midterm elections. Are they working those issues hard as they try to come out on top of this conflict?
Definitely. This is not something you can hide. We all. I know, unfortunately, it's a bad situation in the domestic politics in U.S. Recently, since the second term of President Trump, we have what going on. We are approaching the midterm election in a few months. People were talking before about World Cup. World Cup is a huge U.S. Then we're talking about the price of the gas. How and all the inflation, the burden on American, which is important. So the regime also seeing this thing. They have eyes on these issues. There are a lot of people here in this country, under pretext of the anti-war, trying to, or maybe some isolationism. They bringing this idea to the regime. And the regime probably taking miscalculation. They think the U.S. with is a superior army, a superior presence in the region, which is U.S. So they cannot do that. They cannot touch them because 20% of the global trade is going through the Strait of Hormuz. They were talking about the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandab Strait being closed. So all this thing, the regime is betting on those U.S. Domestic conflict with the global trade, some gap between the U.S. and the European allies, between NATO. War in the Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia still is there. So all these things, they're using it as a probably U.S. won't go for to resume another round of the war, what we saw at the Epic Fury. So they are calculating this measure, but I'm not sure how far they can use those cards.
So the Kurds have been mentioned in various ways during the conflict. I mean, you had, and you're an Iranian Kurd, but there are different, parts, different, I guess, geographically, the Kurdish nation is spread among several countries. What should be the Kurds' role in this? I mean, there was talk of arming them as a some type of revolutionary force. That didn't play out. What should be the Kurdish role in this process?
Yeah, it is a little bit about talk about the Iranian Kurds. Iran, as you said,
Mhm.
Iranian Kurds is a nation being divided between Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and
Mhm.
Syria.
Mhm.
Iranian Kurds are a big, large of the Kurds live in Iran. They live mostly in the four provinces western Iran, which is important. The Kurds are very among the most organized and disciplined group in Iran. In 1979, Kurds were only group at the only while in Tehran, other city, they see Khomeini in the moon, the picture of Khomeini in the
Mhm.
Kurdistan. They did not accept the Islamic Republic openly, and the Khomeini declared fatwa jihad against the Kurd. For decade, 1 decade, military armed struggle between the Kurds and the Iranian. That was Iraq-Iran era, and nobody paid attention in the Cold War time. So, but the Kurds still remain. Their forces remain inside KRG, and there is
Mhm.
big refugee camps inside KRG, Iraqi Kurdistan, which has been, I should say, they've been under bombardment by the regime last 3 4 months,
Mhm.
more than 170 times. They've been many dozens been killed, many been injured, and mostly these camps are civilian and under supervision of the United Nations. But Iran, while is asking, demanding, creating another conflict over Hezbollah, Lebanese terrorist organization. They asking it should be include those any peace, but it's
Mhm.
killing its own Kurds, Iranian Kurds. Mostly these people are civilians. They're bombing them daily. Just bombed them
Mhm.
yesterday. So they continue. So this is how is the situation is. And Iranian Kurds, as you said, they can play a major role. They are just 4 or 5 months ago, before the 40 days war started, the Kurds asked for general strike, and throughout Iranian Kurdistan, those four provinces, the Kurds peacefully they were strike the bazaar and market. So and when the war started on February 28th, I know, and the media and the immediately in media, American media or Western media were discussing airstrike is not enough to change this regime, because the tone of the, if you remember, the first day and second day was regime is going to be
Mhm.
changed in one way or other. But who, because we don't have a one a boot on the ground. We unfortunately the experience of Iraq, Afghanistan, but because an airstrike is not going to destroy this regime. Airstrike did not destroy even ISIS.
Mhm.
You needed boot on the ground. So the Kurds were probably they looked. The Kurds were among the group who can play a major role, even though it not materialized, and there was a lot of speculation what happened, what's supposed to be happened. But the Kurds really they can play a major role in any change in Iran. They see themselves as the ally of United States.
Mhm.
So they were part of the Iranian Kurdish political parties, and especially Komala party of Iranian Kurdistan was trained by US in 2015-16 in fight against ISIS. So they will been there, but it should be right time, and all preparation be there. You cannot engage in any conflict with the regime has it at this stage.
Thank you. What is the role of the Arab states in this conflict? And the Kurds historically have a difficult relationship with Syrian government, with the Turkish government. But what about the Gulf states? I mean, what do you see their role in this?
The Gulf state, for decades they are under pressure of the Iranian.
Hmm.
Mostly this state are Sunni dominated, but like in the worst position, country like Bahrain has a majority Shia, but the government is the Sunni. So
Hmm.
Iran trying to interfering these countries. And at one point they are Iranian proud. They have a four capital of the Middle East. They are in Damascus. They are in the Beirut. they are in the Baghdad and the Yemeni capital Sana'a. So they are under pressure. But this country now, they are after last 10, 15 years, they are trying to become more modernized. They're talking about become like tourism hubs, financial hub. They become model like Singapore's. But and just last year, when the President Trump, visited those countries, they promised spend, invest trillions in those countries. So that's a vision they want to have in 5, 10 years from now. But with, with the country like Iran, just imagine one ballistic missile. What can do, to economy of the Dubai and Abu Dhabi. This is those countries are under pressure of Iran, even though they like get rid of this regime, but it should be very cost. At the same time, they are not sure how much protection can get from United States. They want to be sure the United States, if to go war, be protect them all the way. Maybe they have money, they have all these things, but we have also other actors in the region in the recent year. We have China, they have massive investment. After the Russian and the Ukrainian conflict, many Russian invested in those countries. So there are other interference on those region. Even though this country historically they are United States allies, but this is really hard to say how they should manage this. Probably the best thing they want to try to at this point manage this conflict and keep it at the level, even though they know these regime can be danger for them in the future, but just they want to manage and keep it under control at this stage.
Thank you. Do you feel there's enough attention being paid to minority groups such as yours in Iran with the entire conflict and how it's being dealt with from the Western perspective?
When I'm here 15 years, I representing Komala party of Iranian Kurdistan. I have tried, I have talked in many think tanks, universities, with the government, with the Congress, prior to October 7, prior to this. There were a little bit known about Iranian Kurds. As I said, Iranian Kurds, even though they played major role in the Kurdish nationalism, but sometimes we were talking about Syrian Kurds, about Iraqi Kurds, how the relation, even Turkey Kurds, they have conflict with Turkey, but we barely heard before. Not now, before, about Iranian Kurds. How I know sometimes I use the terminology like forgotten struggle, but even I try to bring to attention. Say Iran is not just Persia. Iran is about the Kurds, about Turkmen, about the Baluch, about the Arab. And one thing I should, to the audience, Iran until early 20th century was not a centralized country. Iran always been, the Kurds had their own principalities, until 19th century. Iran, even throughout ancient times, we were talking about kings of kings in Iran. Means there were other kings. So this is the situation. I think we as a political party, Komala party and other Kurdish groups, now we have a alliance of the Iranian Kurdish political parties, 6 political parties. We asking for federal Iran. We're not asking about like separate state at the stage for the Kurds. We think the Iranian Kurds, they have a federal model, or they manage own provinces with other with Iran's vast natural resources. They could have a better future. But I think, back to your question, as answer, in short answer, I say no, that's not been enough. They should, because with attention to this group, with I think support, probably it will be easier to manage this regime, which is getting very dangerous to its people, to region, and probably to the world.
You mentioned centralization and decentralization several centuries ago. There's been a lot of talk of the government of Iran being decentralized and the military command structure being decentralized, and that's one of the issues the Trump administration's having an issue dealing with. Is that true? I mean, are there certain almost autonomous military groups in Iran at this point?
Yes, I heard this debate, this
Mm-hmm.
argument,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember when at the first day of the war, Khamenei and the first week, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
its military leader all killed. Plus, some of them killed in 12 days war.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thought, now there is a, decapitation is
Mm-hmm.
completed and there is no one left. But then I saw this argument is being this group are decentralized, they are autonomous, I should say, or just the leader in the provinces or the region. They can continue this conflict without, because any communication, digital communication between this group or this leader, is lethal for them. So
Mm-hmm.
I heard that argument. Now, uh, probably their leader, we don't know, because they
Mm-hmm.
want hide their identity because for any attempt to kill them.
Yeah.
So yes, I have heard
Okay.
that talk. Yes.
How should the West prepare for a new Iran? I mean, what if the regime falls? What do you see happening as far as economically, politically, even geopolitically in the Gulf itself?
Yes, one of the reason for a decade West, in general, even Europeans, or its neighbor, afraid because they saw what happened in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
Millions went to the Europe. What happened in Iraq? Afghanistan is still in conflict after 50,
Mm-hmm.
60 years. How about they say, how about Iran, country the size of Iran, 90 million Iranian, if
Mm-hmm.
this regime fell, what gonna happen? But I think Iran is different, If you look the Iranian component, the Iranian composition, Iranian community in the West, how they contributed to their host countries, to remain them as a level of education, investment, and so all should be asset for the future of Iran. But I think the West and probably United States can play a major role to bring this opposition group together. We as a Kurdish party and also as a Komala party of Iranian Kurdistan have tried in for decades, play our role at three
Mm-hmm.
levels. First, we have tried to unify the Kurdish political party.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have so that mission being accomplished. I said we have a now alliance of the Iranian Kurdish political parties. Then we try to unify Iran's ethnic groups: Turks, Arabs, Azeris, Baluch. There is an organization called Congress of Nationalities for Federal Iran. So
Mm-hmm.
try to unify them around the one demand for the future of Iran, for federal or any decentralized model. At the third level, we have tried to approach the Iranian democratic and Republican, in the sense of Iranian Republican group who are want a democratic future for Iran. So we have tried all that, and all that is there, and probably beside United States in the Cold War era, while it was in seemingly peaceful coexistence with the
Mm-hmm.
Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, try to help the groups like in Poland, other countries. So that role can play in Iran. I think that's not in the conflict with the U.S. Negotiation, U.S. talk. This can play at least to the Iranian people after this massacre happened on
Mm-hmm.
January 8 and 9, over 60,000 or 52,000, as the President Trump said. This is give the hope to Iranian to there is opposition group, is alternative. Iran cannot be chaos. Not gonna another Libya or Syria at the scale of Iran is going to happen. So that thing, that is probably, I don't know if I call it responsibility, but at least alternative, as a plan B, if this government, because eventually this government, if it cannot sustain, if it is this conflict continue, so that can be, keep Iran intact and keep provide a peace to his neighbor and the world, and become one of the closest ally to the West and the United States.
What lessons do you think the West should take from the JCPOA in its eventual failure in a negotiation?
I think the biggest lesson we learned this JCPOA, it was there was not JCPOA did not pay attention to the Iran's ballistic missile capability. That was important. And the second one was the proxies. Iran proxies, they were not part of JCPOA. And how I heard during this MOA.
Well, it looks like we lost Mr. Bayaziddi. We'll give him a minute here to come back. I hope you're enjoying the discussion of, we're an intel show here. We're not an activist show, and we're trying to give you the best intelligence that you can get as far as what's happening in Iran, so you can make your own decisions. I'm not sure what's happened to Mr. Bayaziddi, but we're going ahead and take a break. If he comes back, I'll bring him back in. I had one more question to ask him, but otherwise we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back, cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
Okay, it looks like Mr. Bayaziddi's back, so we'll finish up our interview. Sir, thank you for coming back in. I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
I cannot hear.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I think we're going to have to end the interview there since you can't hear me. We'll try to have you back. You can't hear? Okay, goodbye. So, all right, let's talk about a few stories while I have you here. Trump is advising Netanyahu to leave Lebanon and Syria. That's a story that you should know. It's on cdm.press, and it's up there. You can read it and take a look at it. Also, Russia intercepts Western AI drones smuggled for deep strikes on military bases. This is the story I talked about before. That's on Sarazm, our Eastern European site. You can dig into that. And then native plant restoration is a big deal, especially up in the Northeast. That one is on the Manhattan.press. So a lot of these stories, we're just trying to make you smart on what's happening. I don't think Mr. Bayaziddi is going to come back. Thank you for joining us today. Check out our social media. Check out my.cdm.press for our no ad subscription. That's a big help for us. Please do that if you haven't done it and you want to support us. And also sign up for our socials on CDM1 on Rumble. Go to YouTube, subscribe to us there. We're on Instagram now, putting a lot of cool videos out. Anyway, we're going to be back tomorrow. I'm not sure who's going to be on, probably Ukraine, but we will see. So with that, we're going to close out this show, and we'll maybe have Mr. Bayaziddi back. But a lot of good information. You're not going to get what you get here anywhere else, I guarantee you. So thank you for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow. Take care.